I started with ICI Australia all those years ago. I've been working for too many years and I'm thinking it's time to retire. So I've been working for 30 years, predominantly in corporate kind of world, but I guess over the last 10 or so years in this semi-government kind of space. So I moved up to the northwest of England to head up what was the chemical cluster for the Northwest Development Agency. So I'm happy to talk about anything else that you want to talk about today, within reason. If there's other questions that you've got about how the hell did an Australian end up standing up and talking at Lancashire, I'm happy to do that. If you want to talk about the demise of ICI, but the rebirth of the industry around what's happened as a result of that demise, I'm happy to do that. But I guess I will initially talk about the Chemistry Growth Partnership and also the innovation strategy that supports that. So I'm happy to take questions as we go, or equally we can do questions at the end if whatever works for you. So let me just give a little bit of context about chemistry innovation and the Knowledge Transfer Network program. Basically, we are, as Mark's already said, a government funded Technology Strategy Board provide half of our funding. The other half of the funding comes in from collaborative projects, predominantly in Europe. So we're not allowed to actually compete in the TSB funding regime because we're already funded by the TSB to do our core activity, but we do help broker and pull together collaborative partnerships there. So we provide a unique networking platform for people, project identification and collaboration, which is probably fairly relevant for you guys in terms of people come to us and ask us about what or tell us what they're up to, and we put them in contact with people that are actually like-minded or can help them with their technology or their activity that they're working on. An influential voice, and I'll come back to that, but we spend a lot of time hanging around in Westminster with ministers that'll talk to us and also the civil servants. And I'll come back to that because again, that's about the positioning of this strategy, coherent strategy and priorities, which I will go through, and basically all that comes together under the knowledge transfer umbrella. Our mission at Chemistry Innovation is to stimulate product and process innovation. So this isn't just about chemistry, it's about engineering as well, delivering growth for the UK chemistry using industries. So we only do it if it actually has some commercial benefit to the UK, and some of my counterpart KTNs don't necessarily agree that we can actually do that, but I think that's the only reason for doing it. Just quickly, in terms of our organisation, we dabble with about just over 3,000 organisations within chemistry, chemical sciences, and also academic institutions like this one. We're connected with just over 7,000 people within our community, and we've got a lot of a portfolio of collaborative projects and a huge amount of people involved. We're leveraging, or to date we've leveraged around £240 million worth of funds, and from that funding we've actually generated a potential value for those companies just over £1 billion, 1.3 billion I think it is. So it's kind of generating, converting the science into commercialised value for industry, and that kind of is the key to our role. I often will stand up and say if we don't know somebody that can help you, they probably don't exist. My team cringe at that point, but I guess part of what we do is about being connected and being able to connect you to people that are able to either take your technology and take it into the commercial environment, or somebody who wants to put something into a commercial environment but are missing a cog in terms of technologies. So as we sit here today, the future is changing. The chemistry using industries are actually aligning, and this is the chemical manufacturers and the downstream sectors, so the Unilevers, the Procters and Gamble's, the pharmaceutical guys, AstraZeneca, GSK and the likes, and coming together to say to the government that chemistry is important. And in what you said was important from an industrial point of view, you've missed a big component, which is chemistry. So we've set up a thing called the Chemistry Growth Partnership, and it's very timely because yesterday we had our first meeting, and we pulled together some aims and some aspirations about what we need to do with government and also with the science to underpin the growth in the UK economy. To reinforce how important it was, yesterday we had Vince Cable and Michael Fallon turn up, which was, I was going to say it was a challenge. I should just say it was fantastic, but it's always a bit of a challenge when there's two ministers in a room. But reinforce the importance as they see for chemistry underpinning some of the economic growth in industry in the UK. There's an acceptance that the chemistry innovation strategy that Mark held up, and I do have some copies of that here, but that this strategy is underpinning a lot of the growth in the UK economy and also in what we do in the chemical sciences arena. There's some there, you can take as many as you like or none if you like, and that actually does spell out the priorities for the chemistry intervention in the UK. The chemistry growth strategy was launched yesterday, hence I don't have physical copies of it with me here. There was only so many books I could carry out from London this morning. And I decided that the innovation strategy was important. But I can get you copies of this if you like. But this is actually saying across the scope what's important for the chemistry using industries in this country and where's the growth going to come from. So it's a strategy, as I said, for growth in the chemistry using industries. Now let me just, because this is a term that we use a lot but not everybody uses a lot, the chemistry using industries are industries that are dependent on the chemical sciences. So this gives you an idea of the industries that are actually involved there and also the dimensions of those industries. It's about 195 billion GVA, gross value added, to the UK economy. The chemical manufacturing bit, which most people would associate with the chemical sciences, is 10 billion. But as you can see there, there's quite a lot of additional value from other areas. Predominantly, if you look at consumer products, that is paint, personal care and home care type activity. So from shampoos to detergents and everything in between. So I guess I wanted to sort of firstly plant that it's £195 billion worth of GVA, so it's bloody big. And it's not just about chemical manufacture. So with that comes some huge opportunity for all of us in the room and for kids that are coming up through school and university now. And it's not just about the chemical manufacture. The value chains are currently the lead industrial contributor to the national economy. And through the Accelerated Innovation Program that we've outlined in our strategy, we target growth initiatives in a competitive business environment. So we're hoping that this is actually going to add another 50% GVA to the UK economy. So another £100 billion between now and the year 2025. So that's quite ambitious, quite bullish in a market that maybe is flat at the moment. So a lot riding on the innovation and the supply chain rebuild. If I go back to the chemistry growth strategy for a second, there's three big asks in this strategy. One is about securing competitive energy feedstock supplies. For those of you who may or may not know about the Grangemouth situation at the moment, there's a bit of a standoff between the unions and INEOS, one of the core chemical manufacturers in this country. The Grangemouth facility is closed at the moment pending resolution of those activities. Kind of sensitive when we were launching yesterday a growth strategy, but we did manage to weave our way through that. But we need to actually work out how we're going to get competitive energy, and not just for in manufacture but also as feedstocks in this country. The situation with shale gas in the States has actually repositioned chemical manufacturing. It is so cheap to manufacture in the US now that we need to actually work out how we're going to compete in this market. So that's our number one ask. The second one is the establishment of an open access innovation centre for formulated products. As a nation, we're one of the biggest countries that actually produce formulated products. And what we need to do is actually get better in the product design and understanding how these recipes or formulations are coming together to get better, more innovative products and be able to cater for the products that we don't even know about yet. And the third one is rebuilding the UK chemistry supply chain. So I talked already about the supply chains for aerospace and automotive, but a lot of the supply chains have been broken in the past, and we need to actually rebuild those in the UK. So rather than buying in component parts, We want to actually get them manufactured here, the chemistry going into component manufacturers here, and then the components going into the assembly lines for the aeroplane and the car as it comes through. So they're our three big asks at the moment, and it's underpinned by quite a lot of activity as well. So climate change solutions, that we feel that the chemical sciences can provide some opportunity to actually solve the climate change and meet the regulations that are now in place. Leveraging government initiatives. It was quite funny when we got together. We had 3 SMEs in the room for the growth partnership, and they all said they wanted to have some funding that did this, this and this, and they wished that there was government schemes to do this, this and this. And all the schemes that they were talking about existed. They just didn't know about them. So part of this is actually being able to leverage what's already in place, working out where there are gaps and actually putting in place things where there is a need. International trade opportunities. Just the chemical manufacturers itself are the largest exporter to the UK, and one of the only areas that's actually positive to the balance of trade in this country. So the government really does need to actually firstly understand that and see what other opportunities they can get from that. Finance and funding almost goes without saying, but how do we actually make sure that we can lubricate the marketplace and get both big and small companies working together to actually step change what's going on with our product development and our innovation and skills. It's not last because it's not important, and this is skills right from postgrad right through to what's required on shop floors, to what's required in laboratories, to what's required to manage businesses, and entrepreneurial skills and the whole lot. So it's not just skills for manufacturing in that sense. So the growth partnership is about industry and government working together to deliver growth in the UK economy. And innovation, as I've already said, is at the heart of the growth potential within the chemistry using industries. So I don't need to probably tell this audience, but we have to tell some audiences that chemistry is everywhere. It's £600 billion worth of sales. I've already said it's £195 billion of GVA, and it's quite significant. It's about 60% of the output for the UK. So it's quite important to the UK economy. And again, we are the solution to some of the problems or some of the regulatory issues that we've got to address over the next little while. The strategy for innovation in the UK chemistry using industries, as Mark's already said, was launched in June 2013, and we're working through those plans at the moment. And what you'll see in this strategy is the sectors that we're actually trying to look at in terms of where the opportunities are for innovation, a bit of a guide about where we see the priorities and where we see government intervention actually adding some value, and focus of the efforts of my team in terms of where we're going to put our efforts and where our partners are going to invest their efforts as well. Some of the primary industry sectors that we're looking to target, and these are fleshed out in a lot more detail in the report. I won't bore you with all of that, but these are kind of the big areas that we're actually looking at. Some of these are within the industrial strategies that the government, Vince Cable, launched a while ago, and some of these we're just saying are really important, like chemical manufacture, to underpin all this other growth. So construction, aerospace, automotive, energy. Energy is really, really going to be a big opportunity, but a big challenge for us to work through as the UK economy. And you would have seen this week the announcement about the nuclear positioning, and that's one component, but there's a whole host of components that we need to get right here. Life sciences, there's been some noise around pharmaceutical companies closing down in the UK, but there's a whole lot of small and medium-sized companies in the UK that are actually, need to be able to come into their own as well. So, and food manufacture, it's probably the largest manufacturing sector within the UK, and quite important for all of us that it's actually done well. So there's been an analysis of these sectors, as I just talked about on the previous slide, with what's required in terms of what could the chemical sciences bring to these areas. And again, I won't bore you with all of these things, but I think if I just pick out a couple. So in energy, delivering secure, economical and sustainable energy, that kind of goes without saying, but somebody needs to say it, so we thought we would, because everybody else is assuming it's going to be there. And another big area across the board is the lightweighting materials, so actually making things lighter and actually then using what you might discover in aerospace and lightweighting some of the planes on that large scale and what could potentially come into cars. So for example, we're doing a lot of work at the moment around graphene and what that potentially could be utilised in if we could ever make it at scale. At the moment we can make it about 1 inch by 1 inch, I'm told, but being able to make it to cover an aeroplane could be a challenge. So we might need to get Richard Branson to have his translucent spaceship that's covered in graphene and see if we can excite some more investment that way. So quite a lot of opportunities, I guess, in that sense. And I guess, you know, if you break it down into the areas again, you get to see, you know, there's some common areas of opportunity for chemistry and the engineering that goes with that. And there are some things that are unique for different areas. This country has a big issue or a big opportunity around construction. It's not about the new build, it's how you retrofit existing buildings to do something clever. I live in a home that was built in 1590 in Bolton, downtown Bolton, you know, it doesn't really have double glazing. I don't guess they worried about it much with the mullion windows and the likes, but you know, how do we actually make these buildings more sustainable rather than all the energy going out the windows, as I'm sure it is in my house. And high performance insulation materials, and it's not just the construction of things, but it's the deconstruction of things as well. We had a big project a few years ago about how you get paint off wood so that it can be recycled, you know, if it's depending on what type of paint it is on those pieces of wood, it's very difficult to actually strip it back and actually be able to reuse the raw materials. I guess some cross-fertilisation we see between the life sciences and the food area. So there's been a lot of emphasis and a lot of regulation in the life sciences area around making sure that the additives in the pharmaceuticals work, that it's actually the system is reliable and consistent, and that there is security around the product. None of us want to actually have a drug that actually has been tampered with. What we're seeing is that some of the learnings out of the pharmaceutical kind of community is now actually venturing across into food, as food becomes an area potentially of risk in terms of the security. The access of being able to contaminate food in a supermarket, and how do you actually prevent that from happening is obviously something that these guys have had to work with over the years. So again, some of the cross-fertilisation between these sectors we can actually broker and facilitate. Home and personal care. Now, I'm not going to stand here and say that shampoo is going to actually change the state of the nation, because it won't, but making a more effective shampoo that when you run it down the plug hole, it does less damage to the environment and the world around us is quite important. So again, you know, the greener products is becoming a big factor there, and bio-derived seems to be quite a flavour at the moment in the home and personal care area. And I think it's also the novel effects. You see so many new ingredients now, whether it's aged prevention of it. Can't even say it. That's not very good, is it? I'm really 103 and I've been using it for quite a while. But it's the age. It's gone out my head, whatever it is, but, you know, rejuvenation of your skin, and also, you know, the straightening of your hair or the curliness of your hair, or some of you may say there's no hair involved at all, but you know, there's a whole host of ingredients now on the shelf that claim a lot of chemistry in their application, and whether some do or don't, or whether there's any real rocket science in it or not. We work closely with companies like Croda, who actually do a lot of this activity, and actually, you know, a lot of using what's happening in the biosystem, making sure that that's replicated in their products. And you know, it's quite fascinating. We normally, when we've got a minister to take around a factory, we normally take them to a Croda factory, because they quite like the fact that in the laboratory there's hair hanging up and there's all sorts of different things going on. So I think they think they're going to get some anti-aging products as a result of a visit, but it doesn't always happen. And then obviously the chemicals manufacturing itself. So at the beginning of the supply chain, we need to make sure that we've got this actually in place and robust. And there's a big emphasis at the moment for local councils to actually work out what they're going to do with household waste. So we've got a few projects going on at the moment about how you convert household waste into energy or into feedstocks for chemical manufacture. So you solve, within an urban economy, you solve some of the problems that actually are happening within that smaller community. So common threads, as I've said, tied to different sectors. And I guess what we're about is saying, right, so if all of that's going to happen, where do we target public innovation or intervention to accelerate the innovation program? So some of this stuff will happen anyway, but where do we think we really can accelerate the program and get something specifically going as a consequence of the opportunity and what partner, the development, I guess, in terms of what partners are up to. So basically what we've come up with is there's three main areas that we're actually going to be working on: raw materials for the 21st century, smart manufacturing processes and design for functionality. And then within those three, there's another three areas that we'll be focused on. So the renewable feedstocks, unconventional oil and gas, and scarce metals and materials. It's frightening when you go to some of the design communities and people don't understand that some of the materials or ingredients that they're using are going to disappear. So they're developing a whole new set of products based on ingredients that aren't going to exist unless we work out how we get them out of some of the products that have already been made. Smart manufacturing is really about the chemical processes, the biological transformations and the resource efficiency. So making sure what we do is as efficient and robust as it can be. And then the design for is, it's the name is in the title. So making sure that actually we've got this formulated products area and the product that we're designing actually is as good as it can be. Making sure that we're taking the circular economy spirit and activity and novel materials and their creation. I mean, the theory is that 90% of the products that we're going to be using in 5 years' time we don't know about yet. It's hard to believe, but if you think about it 5 years ago, it's probably true. And how do we actually also minimise the waste that comes out of those things? We've seen Tesco's this week talking about the waste that comes out of I think it was the lettuce leaf bags that they used as an example. But I'm married to somebody who works in the food sector and the waste is enormous. So how do we actually get some of that fed back into the products and use some of that waste as good feedstocks for the future? And we underpin all of that with sustainability and that it gives the UK an advantage. The UK can't be good at everything all of the time, in spite of its imperial heritage, but we're trying to actually carve out what really are compelling advantages for the UK and then make sure that we exploit those and invest in those and intervene in those to get the best effect for the UK. Then we've actually done a little bit of those 9 areas across the sectors that we're looking at and just making sure that there was a fit of those. And again, there's a table in the strategy that'll go through that. But it's about where the intervention's going to make a difference. So people will often say, well, why don't you intervene in this area? And actually, it's probably because it won't make the difference. The companies are already doing the investment or there's already a major program going on in that area. So this, as I say, for us is about where the intervention is going to make a difference. And I'm happy to talk about specific examples in here if anybody's interested over a sandwich. And really that's what I was going to talk about in terms of the strategy and make sure that that was clear in terms of there is a strategy, there is an opportunity to connect in there. Collaborative partnerships are important from our point of view, both in Europe and in the UK. And I guess we're here to make sure that those collaborative partnerships are as effective as they can be, but also that we can broker those relationships or indeed put you in touch with a company that maybe can utilise your technologies and vice versa. So I guess I won't say we're here to help because people from ICI PLC used to say that when they came out to Australia and it never quite felt like that. But there is some opportunity here to exploit what the government's putting in place, both for your research but also for your university. So that would be the message that I would leave you with. And as I said, I'm happy to talk about, the evolution of the chemical industry in this country or beyond, or anything else that you may want to talk about. And please do take one of the documents away. You know, there's a team of experts in chemistry innovation. We're just down the road in Runcorn normally. If there was anything specific in here that you wanted to talk to somebody about, drop me a line and I'll make sure the expert who can help you with that will be put in touch with you. So let me just see if there are any questions before we maybe break for a sarnie or whatever.